Hey everyone, Julian here, and today I am going to be making a sample lo-fi house track from scratch. I made a few other lo-fi house tracks from scratch on this channel, but I've never made a specific one where I was like, let's dive in with a sample and sort of work with that. So yeah, here goes. And I'm going to be giving away the project file at the end of this for free in the description, so make sure to pick that up. And yeah, let's dive in. So what I have here is I have this sample, and then I have this little melody I was playing around with. I'll play it for you real quick. So yeah, so the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this sample and I'm going to do some processing. So let's get an EQ8 and I'll do a little bit of like a bandpass type of shape, you know. I'm trying to do I'm going to cut out the low end, but then I also want to do the kind of like lo-fi thing that I do on here a lot where you make like a little low pass and give it a little boost in the Q like that. Let's hear how that sounds. Nice. So the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a saturator on. Let's turn the drive up a little bit. And let's turn up the bass frequency on the analog clip and then mess around with the depth a little bit. Alright, that's cool. You can hear that snare is getting like nicely saturated, but I think it's going to sound pretty cool later on. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually duplicate this and I'm going to make a bass. So when I make sampled lo-fi house like this, I tend to usually just use the sample to make a bass, to be honest with you, because, like, for one, it's just going to sound a lot better. It's going to sound a lot more sort of, like, you know, together with the sample. And also, like, when you try to make a bass line under these kinds of things a lot of time, it can sound kind of weird. So, yeah, I just like to do it this way. Alright, that's pretty good. So you can see I just took the saturator from this one up here and kind of, like, messed with it a little bit. And then I have that EQ there that's just making it just a low end. So now we have our sample split up. And yeah, so from here, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on some drums. So let's get a 909. I'll just use Ableton's Core 909. But what I am going to do is I'm going to turn the kick down a bit. So let's do like -3. And then let's make a 2-bar pattern just like the sample. And let's put on some kicks here. And I'll play this with just the bass. Alright, that's cool. So the next thing I'm gonna do in here is we're gonna add some cool hi-hats. So when I'm doing like lo-fi house hi-hat patterns, I try to just make it like kinda like a cool, funky house pattern, you know? Like you don't wanna make it necessarily too busy. But you want to, like, the hi-hats, I feel like, give it a lot of groove. And honestly, really give it a lot of that, like, lo-fi sound. Because it's kind of where, like, yeah, just like I said, like, that groove, that, like, bounce really comes from. Alright, that's cool. And then we can just duplicate that. I'll switch it up a little bit, though. Like, maybe we'll do like that. That sounds good. And you can see also I moved all the 16th notes back a little bit, so just a little bit of swing. If I quantize it real quick, you can see. Yeah, not quite as like groovy and cool. So then I guess I'll add a clap real quick, and we'll hear how that sounds kind of in the mix. Alright, we have a little funky house groove. So let's sidechain this bass to the kick, and I'll put everything else to the sidechain as well. But yeah, I'm just going to put the suppressor on, switch it to the sidechain mode, and then we'll go 909 kick 909 post effects, and there we go. So now that kick can kind of come through a little bit more. Alright, cool. So let's also copy that over to the sample, to the high-end sample. That's cool. And we'll play around with that melody later. So now, before I get done with the drums real quick, I'm going to add some processing to the drums because you really don't want to just, you know, use the dry Ableton 909. It sounds good, but it doesn't really sound good when it's super dry like that. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to do what I was talking about earlier that I did with this high-end sample, where I'm basically just going to move that frequency back a little bit and then give it the little boost in the Q. And there we go. We have a pretty nice lo-fi vibe. And then after that, I'll just add some saturation. Between EQ and saturation, you can really make anything sound like lo-fi house. Like, it's not really difficult. It just sounds very good. Yeah, there we go. So you can hear it's pretty distorted, pretty like rough around the edges, but I kind of like that, honestly. We can maybe dial that back a little bit between the drums and the sample. Well, alright, cool. So now what I'm going to do here, before I move on to anything else, is I'm going to work on this little melody as well. The first thing I'll do is I'll copy the sidechain onto there, just so we have it. Alright, that's cool. So, let's make a sound for this. So I'm going to grab analog, and I guess I'll just make like a... just something cool. Maybe we'll play around with the filter a little bit. Yeah, that sounds good. Now, let's get the amplitude envelope kind of like this. Nice. Now, I'm going to turn up the vibrato a little bit. It really helps for the lo-fi sound because it gives you that, like, pitch drift. Yeah, there we go. Now, let's also turn up this unison a little bit. Awesome. So, now, what I think this needs immediately is a little bit of reverb and some echo. So, let's give it some reverb. Yeah, there we go. And then the echo, of course, gives it like the lo-fi sound. Now, I'm going to use this Clip Slap analog preset. It's one I've used in my videos quite a bit before. However, there are a few things we're going to do. Because if you listen right now, you can probably hear it, and you can see it over here if you can't hear it. This noise is adding a bit of like background noise, which is cool, but it's, you know, not really what we want here. It's kind of just messy. I could just put in a noise sample, which I am going to do toward the end of this. So yeah, I'm going to turn that off. And then another thing is if you listen to this, it's way too loud. And that's because this input is up all the way. So I'm going to turn that down. Okay, there we go. So now, like I said, I'm going to add some cassette noise over this. Let's go here. I have one of my own that I will use. Let's go in Lo-Fi House Sounds with a Z. Okay, cassette noise 1. Once it loads, there we go. Let's drop that over here. And now, we just have some nice lo-fi background noise. So I'm going to do some kind of fine-tuning things here. The first thing I want to do is on the drums, actually turn that down a little bit. There we go. And same thing on the sample. We just need to have everything be a little bit more lo-fi. Okay, cool. So then also on this lead, I'm going to add an EQ. I'll put it before, well, let's put it after everything actually, but still before the sidechain. Just kind of how I do it. There we go. And then let's add a little saturation after that EQ. Yeah, nice. Okay, so let's see where our master is at. Alright, that's cool. So now, the last thing I'm going to do here, before turning this over, is we're going to do a little bit of master processing, because I feel like it really helps with lo-fi house. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put some saturation on the master, and I'm going to go pretty subtle with it, but this is a really good way to make everything sound kind of lo-fi. You can hear that really just gives it that, like, that crunch. And again, like, you don't want to go too hard with it, but just like 3 dB of gain on that is enough to give it, you know, to kind of glue everything together. So then one thing I am also going to try is I'm going to try a little bit of an EQ8 actually before that. I'm going to do that same thing where you just cut out some of the high end. Alright, that sounds pretty good. So what this does is it does what I was saying earlier where it kind of gives it the lo-fi sound by cutting out the very high highs and giving it that little bump there. But we're doing it like to all of this as a group, so it's a really good way to just sort of make all your sounds kind of sound like they're in the same world. The thing about lo-fi house is it's very much about the texture and the quality of your sounds, and not necessarily the quality in terms of like how good they are, but quality in terms of like the sonic quality, like how they sound. And so like part of this is you need to make everything kind of sound like it's in the same world, like I'm saying. And a really good way to do that is to add this EQ and the saturation on the master, because again, they just sort of like putting the same processing on everything is a great way to make it sound similar. So yes, this sounds pretty solid. I'll turn the master down a little bit. There we go. Alright, cool. So we have a pretty cool little beat. So I think that's going to be it for today, guys. Make sure to let me know what you think of this video in the comments, and make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. Once again, you can get this project file or template or whatever you want to call it for free in the description. If you want to use it to make your own track, like if you want to just make a track out of this, go ahead. Or if you want to use it to kind of see some things, or maybe even just kind of, take some of these effects presets, go for it. It's in the description. And yeah, thank you again, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow with another tutorial.